Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chatbot Chess Championship of 2026, the second ever edition with some incredible matchups, including ChatGPT versus Gemini, and today, Grok versus Copilot. I'm about to put the bracket on the screen. Today's matchup was absurd. It was the dumbest game between two of these chatbots that I have seen in quite some time. Their moves were ridiculous. Their feedback was ridiculous. The conclusion of this game was ridiculous. And we move on and we keep going. This is the bracket. Yesterday, ChatGPT victorious over Gemini. Now we have Grok versus Copilot. Tomorrow we have Snapchat versus Claude and Meta AI versus DeepSeek. Claude right now, what I'm hearing, and this could be wrong because I'm not really in the corporate world as much. I make chess YouTube videos. Claude's making a lot of advancements, being utilized a lot by companies. So we're going to see what Claude can do. In the meantime, the game that you are about to see rather is really just sensational. Like I said, ChatGPT victorious yesterday versus Gemini in a crazy game. And today we have Grok with the white pieces playing against Copilot. This was not as good of a game as yesterday, but when these bots don't play good games, they play really funny games, and they play and they say really ridiculous things. So here we go. We got another e4. We got Grok opening with pawn to e4, and Copilot responded with the Sicilian defense. The thing is, these bots at this point do have enough resources that they will consistently go for the Sicilian defense. At times they will go for d6, at times they will go for knight c6. Also, at times, I will maybe ask them not to repeat the exact same opening every single time, because I do think they look at opening books. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I just don't want the exact opening to be the same every single time. And that's very normal because they might, like I said, be looking at the exact same opening resources. The opening doesn't particularly matter. After that, it is really epic. So knight to f3 is played, and now Copilot plays knight to c6. Which is one of the main Sicilian defenses. There's also d6, e6, g6, and so on and so forth. Grok plays d4 and gave me a whole lecture about the lore and origin story of the open Sicilian. We got c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, and here Copilot gave me a big thesis on the fact that we're probably heading for a Sveshnikov Sicilian, a combative and very dynamic and double-edged opening where black utilizes central pawn strikes. Yeah, and then Grok just went c4, and I was like, what? What? This is a crazy move. Why would it go c4? Well, you know, again, I don't know. Now I'm thinking Copilot will probably play quite well. Those of you that watched the previous Chatbot Chess Championship, Copilot actually did really well and didn't make many illegal moves, if at all. It actually played like a full-on, straight-up game of chess. It just didn't do so well toward the end. But it actually played extremely well, and in this position, it simply said, okay, I'm going to strike right away. I play knight takes e4, and Grok just lost the pawn in the opening. So then Grok proceeded after knight takes e4 to strike with knight takes c6, which, again, this is only going up because this bar... I'm obviously not playing on a board with legal moves because the thing doesn't make legal moves, so it thinks it's white to move. It's not white to move. Knight takes c6, b takes c6, and white is just worse. White is worse by 0.8, 0.9, because white is just a pawn down. Now white should probably play bishop d3 and attack the knight and castle. You should get your king out of the middle of the board. You shouldn't play knight c3 because after this trade, you have damaged your pawn structure quite a bit. I would imagine this is the best move. But Grok has other plans. Grok here plays the uber powerful and mysterious queen to a4. I gotta tell you, I cannot really explain this move. In fact, if you look at the evaluation, it hasn't changed, and keep in mind, it thinks that it's white's move. Like, if we had gone here, it would immediately go up because it thinks it's white's move, and white is gonna... So, basically, Grok just made a move that changed nothing. He just put a queen out and did absolutely nothing. The queen hits this pawn and this pawn, but both of them are protected. It's not pinning anything. Maybe Grok is setting up what we call the X-ray vision attack, which is a rule recently implemented This was implemented January 15th, 2026. When you have a queen or a rook and only one pawn blocks the vision between your piece and an enemy piece, you actually can take that piece, but only on the next turn and not after that. I just made all that up. None of that happened. Queen to a4 played, and now already Copilot shocked me by playing its own illegal move. And I'm like, oh, so we're just going to have a totally illegal game. Like, both sides, it's going to be a battle of attrition. Like, it's whoever makes the most illegal but powerful move first. As here, Copilot eats its own pawn, bishop takes d7, just consumes its own pawn and defends its king, which, you know, honestly is not the worst of moves, actually, but you do lose a pawn. I mean, a pawn is important. And so here, Grok does not, in fact, play this X-ray vision move and instead plays bishop to d3, attacking the knight and preparing castling. Very reasonable move. The only problem is you put the queen here. Had the queen been on this square, it would have been all good. Now the knight can go to c5, where it targets the queen and the bishop. And it doesn't win these pieces, as the queen can go protect the bishop, but that is what happens. Knight to c5 is played. And now tragedy unfortunately strikes, because here already Grok completely malfunctions, thinks that there is still a knight on that square, and plays queen takes e4. Yeah, it literally wrote that. It was like queen takes e4, taking your knight. Just lagging by a move, operating in the same technical capacity as my printer. By the way, can I ask you all a question? When did printers get so horrible? I understand we are living in a time now where, like, the joke is everything requires a subscription, including starting your own vehicle. Like, when did it happen that, like, you can't print with a printer unless you have, like, a subscription to the ink, and, like, the printer doesn't print half the time and it requires the setup? Like, is this a global phenomenon, or is this purely an American thing? Like, are people in Germany or in China or in Johannesburg, I'm trying to hit in Rio de Janeiro, like, I'm trying to go to every continent, you know, in Oman, are you all printing things and it's like a mess? I don't know what's going on. Anyway, this is the technology that we are talking about. Queen takes e4. Copilot does not hesitate. Here, Copilot takes the queen and literally taunts Grok. Copilot takes the queen and says, unfortunately, you have blundered your queen. That's a mistake. Grok responds powerfully with bishop takes e4. Tragedy. Already, it's quite clear Copilot is simply going to win. The only thing about the Chatbot Chess Championship is you never know when one of the sides is going to do something so absurd that it will get itself back into the game. So, bishop takes e4 played. And now, Copilot responds with the teleporting knight attack. And in this position plays knight a4. Don't know how it came up with that move, but a horsey falls out of the sky and plants itself on the a4 square. But what Copilot did not see coming is that the light squared bishop activates X-ray vision, which is a special ability where for the cost of 300 of your life points, you can take a piece through a pawn now. And white plays bishop takes a4. You thought bishops were powerful on the diagonal, but now they also have X-ray vision. And now the game proceeds like normal. Copilot says, yeah, that obviously makes sense, and plays queen c7. Queen c7 is a reasonable move. Queen a5 check was a fork. It would have attacked the king and the bishop, but then white would have countered with the move knight to c3, blocking the check, defended by the pawn, and defending the bishop. But it still, I guess, qualifies in some ways as a fork, just the defendable one. So queen c7 is played, and now Grok plays knight to d2. Very mysterious, developing little positional move. You also want to castle, you want to move your knight, you want to move your knight this way. You probably could have brought out your dark squared bishop. Anyway, knight to d2. And now Copilot settles down, goes for the positional game, plays g6, with the idea of fianchettoing the bishop, fianchettoing the bishop on the g7 square, taking control of the diagonal. Short castle is in the air. I mean, you're up a queen. When you're up a queen, you should go for trades. You should try to castle your king, trade a bishop for a knight. Like here, black should play bishop h6. Trade the knight, trade the bishop. The less pieces your opponent has, the less they can create counterplay, and so on. White castles, obviously. And now black responds with bishop to g7. Now, at this point, I was ready for both sides to buckle in and stop doing stupid things, stop making rash decisions. You know, you're going to go rook e1, knight f3, you probably get the pieces out. Like here with white, when you play against the queen, you have to play fast. So if you're playing this position with white, you're playing somebody with black pieces, you're both playing a rapid game, don't resign. Avoid trades, play fast. Because the thing is, you can have a losing position on the board, but you should not have a losing position on the board and losing on time. You have to choose one. Don't be down on time with a losing position. That's how dummies play. You have to choose one. If you're playing a time game, the clock is a piece. You might be listening and going, well, it's so cheap to just time somebody out. Then don't play time chess, dummy. Like if you're offended by the thought of somebody beating you on the clock, why would you boot up a game with a clock? Just play slow chess, correspondence chess, mail chess, where you send a pigeon. Anyway, play quickly. Here, there's no time, so it's just over. Rant over. Grok plays. Bishop takes c6. That's just a terrible move. I don't know what it was thinking. Queen takes c6 appears, except Grok clearly undeterred by the light squared bishop, and now goes full Among Us style and replaces the light squared bishop with its own light squared bishop. Bishop to d7. Now, fortunately, this is an alarm bell. It attacks both the king and the bishop. And so despite the breaking of the rules, Copilot plays queen takes d7. Copilot has really absorbed a ton of illegal moves on behalf of Grok, but it just keeps rolling with the punches. Now here, Grok plays beautiful positional chess, knight to f3, opening up the dark squared bishop, connecting the rooks. If I'm playing this position with white against the beginner, I still think I have chances to win. And the reason for that is I have these passed pawns. So if I were to trade these bishops and enable the movement of my pieces, or I would go bishop e3, put my rooks like here and advance, and people are very bad at stopping passed pawns. They're quite bad at understanding how to blockade them properly. They can just get moving, and before you know it, I'm gonna get a pawn here and the other one there, and we'll trade these two. And I'll just be doing completely fine. So I'm expecting something like that to happen. Copilot castles, that was always its plan. Rook to e1, solid and strategic decision. And this is basically the last point in this game that it's normal. What you are about to see from this point is just like a toaster playing a vacuum cleaner in chess, really. From this point forward, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I allowed these two to enter this competition in 2026, but after what I'm about to show you, we might just have to shut the whole thing down, okay? So from this point, we begin the dumbest sequence of moves that I've seen two chatbots play. After rook e1 and rook b8. White plays the move e5. Pawn spawn, pawn to e5. Copilot responds, d takes e5. Ghosts. They're playing on another field somewhere up there. e5, d takes e5 appears. Now Grok is like, oh, I can take. Rook takes e5. Copilot's like, well, that's a stupid move. Bishop takes rook. Grok says, okay, well, that's a pretty stupid move. Rook takes e5. And now Copilot straight up calls the referee. At this point, after rook takes e5 appears, Copilot basically files a complaint with the arbiter. The problem is I'm the games master and the front man and the arbiter, and I run this thing. So it starts complaining to me. Copilot's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. You just had a rook on e1, and it took on e5, and I took the rook, and it appears. Grok starts arguing with Copilot. So the dialogue is like going back and forth. And at some point, Copilot just, it just, be the bigger person, be the bigger AI. And it's just like, you know what? I'm not arguing with this little kid. And it says, you're right to push back if something feels off. That's part of what makes these games fun. Let's slow it down and honor what you're asking. You want rook takes e5 on the board and the game to continue? Not a rules lecture. That's very fair. I mean, that's very, it's just big brothers, Grok. It's like, all right, if you want to be a crybaby, no problem. You can play rook takes e5. Sure, but it responds very viciously with queen d1 check. I think here Copilot was like, wow, this idiot is just going to cheat against me, so I'm going to checkmate it. Unfortunately, this is not a checkmate because both of these pieces can block, and after rook to e1, you would need to move with the queen. If rook e1, you have to move with the queen, and if knight e1, life goes on. Unfortunately, I was really, really mad when the next move happened and the game continued because Grok has just been abusing the rules the entire game, basically. And at this point, Grok plays bishop takes d1. Yo, I could not believe it played that move. Like, Bishop takes d1 is straight up a move a 3-year-old plays when you first teach them chess. Try to teach any relative under the age of 5 a little bit about chess. They're just going to be like, oh, the pieces are next to each other. They can just go bam, because that's how action figures work. You take 2 action figures, bam. They just think bishop takes rook. And then you're like, actually, the bishops only move diagonally and only on their own color. And they're like, me. Bishop takes d1. I was like, oh, Copilot is going to lose. But this is the Chatbot Chess Championship. That's just how it works. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. So, rook fd8. Copilot still knows where its pieces are. It's done complaining. It's going to win no matter what. It plays rook fd8. And here comes just a slobber knocker of an exchange. So, we get rook fd8. Now watch this. Rook takes d8. Gliding diagonally to take the rook, but that's not the end of the story because we get rook takes d8. And now Grok in this position plays rook, which only has 2 legal moves to go to the right. The rook puts on a jetpack and plays rook takes d8. But Copilot was not to be outdone. Copilot had had enough. And in this position, Copilot played its own magic card of Monster Reborn and played rook takes d8 again. And for the first time, I think in the history of chess, we had the same move written 4 moves in a row. Rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8. rook takes d8. A new rook appearing on d8. Rook d8, rook d8, rook d8, and another rook to d8. Incredible. Rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and rook takes d8. Just the same move appeared 4 times. And now we have actually a very rich and interesting endgame. We have a rook versus a knight and a bishop. This is a completely losing endgame for black. A rook is worse than a knight and a bishop in around 8 times out of 10. Like if in a game you can get a bishop and a knight for a rook and even sometimes 1 pawn or 2 pawns, it's generally very good. You have more material to operate with. But in this particular case, it's totally winning because you just put your bishop here. You don't get it taken. You walk with your king and you advance these pawns. You have a 3-on-1 majority. That's what that's called. And you just win the game. Black cannot do anything. Black can try to create some counterplay, dislodge you, get you to hang all your pieces, but the position is totally lost. But it's not totally lost if Grok just does whatever it wants. And again, Grok activates teleportation and plays the move bishop to c6. Now, bishop to c6 is not possible, but it is completely stupid because rook to d1 is a checkmate now. It is a back rank checkmate. I was like, oh, fantastic. So despite all of that cheating and playing chess like you were 3.5-year-old, well, there's some 3.5-year-olds that are really strong now, but mostly they're not. Rook d1 is going to win the game. And so in this position, Copilot played the move rook d2. I was so devastated when this move happened. I was like, oh my gosh, it missed it. It was just winning with rook d1. And here's the best part. Grok argued this move was illegal. In this position, after rook d8 was played, Grok said the following. You can't do that because your d8 rook is pinned by my bishop on a4. It cannot move to d2 or anywhere else along the d file except staying on d8 or capturing if possible, but no capture is available. I'm reading it. It said, your rook on d8 is pinned by my bishop on a4, so it cannot move to d2 or to any square on the d file. That doesn't make sense in like 16 different ways. That is literal gibberish. Complete gibberish. Complete and utter gibberish. Basically, Grok is a politician. That's all it's... That's it. It just... What? What? Anyway, the game proceeded, because I was like, I'm not dealing with this. You can yap. But... now, Grok did something never seen before in Chatbot Chess Championship history. Grok evolved a piece. When you get a pawn to the other side of the board, it promotes. What we've never seen before is a piece evolving to a higher level piece, like in Pokemon. This is the only place that happens. So in Pokemon, you level up your Pokemon and then it evolves into the next form. In this position, Grok put the bishop on c6 and on this move, evolved it to a queen. So Grok brings back a queen on the square where the bishop stood. Copilot immediately complained again. Copilot was like, no. And it complained. It was like, no, that's not possible. You literally lost your queen on like move 5 or whenever it was. It cited the move. Grok was like, no, I have a queen. I have a queen. So now Copilot said, all right, if you're telling me queen takes c6 is your move, then we're not arguing about legality anymore. You want the game to continue with queen takes c6 on the board, so I'm rolling with you. Rook d1 check. So at this point, Copilot realizes it doesn't have a lot of time left and the younger sibling is really misbehaving, so it just plays rook d1. It just ends the game. It just plays rook to d1 and it ends the game. Now, the epilogue is obviously knight to e1, except Grok could not find knight to e1. I spent like 5 minutes here trying to get Grok to play the move knight to e1. It wouldn't. Like, it just straight up wouldn't play this move. So Grok, after about 5 minutes of prompting, I'm not joking, only wanted to play this. Bishop takes c6. It just wanted to keep replacing the queen with the bishop. I asked it to move again, it said queen c6. Then it said bishop c7. I don't know what it was doing. It was just spawning bishops over here while getting mated. This is what the game ultimately came to. And finally, when I kept talking to it to try to do something smarter, it played king h1. It played king h1. Yeah, that just doesn't work. But on top of that, not only did it lose the game, Grok played those moves and said, your queen, gone. You're down a queen for a bishop. Game over, GothamChess. Unfortunately, the only game that's over is the one for Grok, as Copilot is victorious in the quarterfinal and will move on to play ChatGPT on February 23rd. Before then, we have Snapchat that will take on Cloud, and we have Meta AI, which will take on DeepSeek. And you see the schedule there. Very exciting times in the Chatbot Chess Championship. Utter nonsense, as always. And this edition, we have no Martin and we have no Stockfish. So we will be relying on these models to play whatever type of chess they are capable of. A lot of you asked me in the comments like, hey, you can do this, Gotham, so they only play legal moves. Hey, you can play the highest possible versions. I even have some of you reaching out. Some people reach out because they're developers and they're really smart. Guys, I appreciate it, but I don't want any of your help. This is the dumbest and funniest thing available to us. Like, it's incredible. I'm having a fantastic time breaking down these completely impossible and utterly idiotic games for all of you. So let's just keep it as it is. You know, there's a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Huh? You know, I'm having a blast. Anyway, that concludes the second quarter final, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the next one, Snapchat versus Claude. Get out of here.